Well, Bill Parcells said you are what your record says you are. Looks like the Buccaneers are what their record says they are. 2-3 so far in the season. If you look at it, a little back and forth, a loss, a win, a loss, a win, a loss. Maybe that kind of season for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Welcome in to your PewterPirates.com's podcast, A Few Extra Bucs. I'm going to bring in my team, producer Justin Thomas, and my partner Roy Cummings. And Roy, I thought the Bucs would actually, after that big win over the Rams, I thought they had a great shot in New Orleans. I thought, Arians has these guys believing it's us against this world and this murderous road trip. But you're the voice of reason along with Justin last week. You said, you know what? The Bucs kind of get us up and they let us down. And that was the case in New Orleans, my friend.
Yeah, it was. Look, I just feel that New Orleans, the way they've been playing the last, few weeks, even without Drew Brees, they've figured out a formula. It's not much different really than what they did with Drew Brees, to be honest. I think the way they're playing offensively is very similar with Teddy Bridgewater in there. And I think that they've got at home. I just felt that they would, they were the slightly better team. And it came out about the way I thought it would. I was asked, the morning before, for a prediction. And I said, I saw this one being 28-24 Saints. And it turned out being 31-24 Saints, even with the garbage touchdown at the end for the Bucs. But, I mean, it kind of went sort of the way I thought it would. I thought at some point the Saints would their talent would pull away from Tampa Bay and that they would win the game, because I just don't think Tampa's at the point where they're ready to win consistently, week in and week out, where they're going to be a team that's they're a team that's going to scare you. And they're a team that's going to surprise you on occasion, but they're not a team that's going to win consistently. And as you said at the top of the show, they are what we thought they were. I thought they were a 500 team going into the beginning of the season, and here we are, just a little more than a quarter way through, and they're just one game below 500. So good chance they win again this week and get back to 500. But I think that's what you can expect for this team the rest of the way.
Yeah, you have talent out there, but boy, you have some holes too, Roy. And I don't know what's more troublesome, that secondary that was, gave Teddy Bridgewater such a big game. And I give Bridgewater credit, but boy, there were some wide open receivers, especially that Michael Thomas third down play when they had the Saints kind of pinned back there. That was a pivotal play in the game. But I think the most troublesome part of this football team is the offensive line. They put a lot of money into this offensive line. I mean, Donovan Smith, just not getting it done. The guy comes out and plays every week, but just because you show up for work doesn't mean you're good at your job. And I mean, the holes on this football team are massive in some really critical areas, Roy.
They are, and you're right. I mean, the Bucs youth. And look, I think we all agreed at the beginning of the year that one of the biggest issues the Bucs had going into this season was the fact that they were very young, very inexperienced in the secondary. And when you take out a guy who's at least got a year's worth of experience in Carlton Davis, a guy who is arguably your best cornerback, at least in terms of press coverage, at least that's the way he's grading out for the Buccaneers right now, because Bruce Arians came right out and said it. You take that away as early on in the game as you did with the Bucs against New Orleans, and that was the guy that you really had planned to have against Michael Thomas for the most part. You're just kind of handing over a big edge to your opponent, and that's what happened. So yes, the lack of experience and the youth of the secondary was exposed in this game, and the offensive line, that group was exposed yet again as well. And I hear what you're saying about Donovan Smith. My disagreement would fall on this. First of all, I think the Bucs are getting better play out of Ryan Jensen than they have in the past, or at least did last year. I think Emily Marpet's played solid, if not really good football. The right side of the line has been adequate at best. And I think you can say the same about Donovan Smith. But again, I'm going to say this about Donovan Smith, and it really kind of goes for DeMar Dotson as well. The Bucs are just asking their offensive linemen to do so much more than a lot of other offensive linemen in the league are asked to do. There just aren't that many left tackles, for example, that that are asked to be out there on an island by themselves as often as Donovan Smith is. It's hard for him, to go 65 plays and really get an A grade because it's just natural. He's going to get beat now and then. And when he does, he's got nobody to help him because the Bucs don't keep chip blockers in very often. They don't keep their tight ends in very often. These guys are out catching passes. And as we've seen the last couple of weeks, when Darren Ogunbowale is in there as the chip blocker, he kind of gets bulldozed over. So not a whole lot of help there for those guys. But at the end of the day, as a team, if that's the scheme you're running, well, then you better have somebody in there who's pretty exceptional at working, on an island by himself. Do the Bucs have that in Donovan Smith? It doesn't seem like it, but I think he's doing about as good as he can.
I want you as my lawyer one day, my friend. I really do. If I'm in trouble and people are saying things about me, I want you to defend me, Cummings, because Cam Jordan, when Donovan Smith got his deal in the offseason, Cam Jordan celebrated on social media in New Orleans like it was Christmas in March. And then he took it out on Donovan Smith and saved that D-line. I mean, they wore that offensive line down in the fourth quarter of that game more than I've seen any line run over another line in recent memory. I mean, they had 6 sacks, and it was by 5 different New Orleans Saints. I mean, that's too much money spent on that offensive line for them to wear down that late. And you know what? I've criticized Jameis Winston enough on this podcast. He didn't throw any interceptions in that game. If you give Jameis Winston more protection, you finally got him a running game. The offensive line was just brutal in that game.
It was. And what's surprising is, I mean, you look at the Rams game where they clearly had an answer and a game plan and a damn good one for Aaron Donald and that pass rush. They had nothing for the Saints. And, to me, that comes down to coaching. I mean, some of it certainly is execution as well, but there was a game plan for taking out Aaron Donald. And it's just like the Bucs didn't quite have the same game plan designed, or certainly not as effective a game plan designed for the Saints and for Cam Jordan. And it's not just Cam Jordan, but at the end of the day, the Bucs had it all figured out against the Rams. They had nothing figured out against the Saints. And to me, that comes down to coaching. And yes, it's part of it is execution, but to me, the biggest part is coaching and getting these guys in a position where they can succeed. And that didn't happen. So, and unfortunately we see with the Bucs, we see that more often than not, that where they're not prepared well enough and they don't have an answer for these guys. And it's only going to get worse because now you're facing a prospect of going up against Carolina, which, by the way, has 20 sacks. I think it's second or third in the league. And now you don't have the right side of your offensive line. You're going to have a couple of journeyman guys in there, and Earl Watford at right tackle, and this other kid Watford at right guard, and Dotson's out, and you're going to have this other kid at right tackle who used to play for the Jaguars. And by the way, he's nothing but a backup, and that's it. I mean, he's really limited in what he can do. So this could get pretty ugly pretty fast in London on Sunday.
Well, it just speaks to how the front office and Jason Light have handled this football team. They haven't drafted well. There's no cap room. There's a lot of holes. I mean, I can't blame Bruce Arians and I can't blame Todd Bowles. There's so much these guys can do. They had a great game plan, as you mentioned, in Los Angeles. And I think they missed a big opportunity in New Orleans, Roy. If they beat the Saints, if they get back-to-back wins against the 2 best teams in the NFC, suddenly this road trip isn't that bad. They have one more game in London, then they get the bye week, and then there's 2 more games. I think that was a huge loss in a lot of ways for this football team. They really failed to seize the momentum when they had it against the Rams to begin the road trip.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Because, you've upset, obviously, one team, Super Bowl player, a Super Bowl team from a year ago. So you upset them, and you got everybody thinking that, hey, this might be the time when the Bucs suddenly turn the corner. I mean, there was a little bit of buzz about the Bucs going into that game. It wasn't what everybody, not everybody was talking about them, but they were at least on the list of teams to talk about going into Sunday, because it's like, hey, they did this. What if they can match it again? And somehow, if the Bucs suddenly take on the Saints and beat them, well, now you've beaten two pretty damn good football teams in a row, and everybody's looking at you in a different light. So again, opportunity lost for the Buccaneers. And this is what we've seen from these guys, year in and year out over the last few seasons, or last decade, I should say, or more, is that, the opportunity is there for these guys to do something special, and they can't get it done. And that's what's disappointing. And it's why, people just continue to shake their heads over this team, because they can't consistently find a way to win games that matter and make a difference. So it's just, again, that's a real disappointing situation for these guys.
Roy, how far away is this football team? I believe in Bruce Arians. I believe in Todd Bowles. I'm starting to believe a little more in Jameis Winston, but boy, at the beginning of that game, Jameis could have easily had a few picks. I don't know if he's the long-term answer. Is this football team anywhere close to making the playoffs or being a contender with this coaching staff, with the core components they have right now?
I think they are. I think they're closer now than they were a year ago. I do like a lot of the personnel. I mean, I like the quarterback. I like the receiving core. I like the tight end core. I actually like the secondary. It just needs some time to develop. I really like the linebacking core. What's not to like? I like some of the young defensive linemen. I think there's a lot of pieces here. I think they got the kicking game figured out. I think Matt Gay will be given the time to correct flaws and mistakes, and that he'll be fine. So I think there's a lot there. I think they're right on the cusp of being one of those teams that can contend. They're not ready yet. That's obvious. We saw that last week. We saw it in week one. We, put these guys up against a good football team, and more often than not, they're going to get beat. But they should be good enough right now to beat teams that are on their level. Teams like the Giants, which we saw, teams like Carolina, that they should be able to do. Teams that are up above them, they're not there yet, and they're going to be inconsistent with that. They're going to have days where they figure it all out and everything goes their way, and they're going to beat a team like the Rams, but then they're going to have days like last week where they just can't seem to get themselves on track, and they're going to end up losing. So, and to me, that's that's a 500 football team. That's a team that's still building, but it's on the cusp. It's there. I mean, it's got the parts figured out where it can beat teams that are at the same level they are. They just can't consistently beat the teams that you have to beat in order to really be a contender.
Well, I really feel sorry for this fan base. I was doing some research on this game. As you know, I cover the Saints as well as the Bucs. And Jameis Winston. How about this stat? He has 24 career wins as an NFL starter. Drew Brees has beaten the Bucs 16 times. So that number jumped out at me. And also, the last time that the Bucs played the Saints without Drew Brees, how about this? Their starting quarterback was Chris Sims. Their best receiver was Joey Galloway, and their best running back was Cadillac Williams. That was back in the 2005 season. Their last game was January 1st of 2006. They had just wrapped up their last playoff clinching berth. And the Saints, obviously, were going nowhere during the Katrina season. So it can be done. Things can be turned around quickly. The Saints have proven that. But the Saints, to me, are in good shape cap-wise for the most part. And they also have a good young core. I think the wild card in this division, because it looks like the Falcons are a hot mess right now, are these Carolina Panthers in the on-deck circle for the Bucs. It's unbelievable to me the dynamic that Kyle Allen has brought to this football team. I mean, he's really sparked this offense. It's a much better team than the team the Bucs saw in week number 2 with Cam Newton.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. And Kyle Allen has proven that he's not a bad football player, which we shouldn't be surprised at. I mean, it's funny how in the NFL, backup quarterbacks are really looked at as something that, is a lost hope, not a last hope. But Kyle Allen's proved that, with a little bit of a running game around him, he could be an effective quarterback, and he's done a good job for him. So, here we go again. I mean, I heard somebody today actually kind of criticizing the Bucs about the fact that they always seem to struggle against backup quarterbacks. But, it's like somebody was saying, Tampa Bay is where backup quarterbacks go to flourish. And, there's something to be said for that. True. But it's, if the Bucs lose to Kyle Allen and the Panthers, it's like, okay, so they're the fourth team in a row then to lose to the Panthers with Kyle Allen at quarterback. So it's not like this is only something that Tampa Bay is doing, but it's just proof that they've coached this kid up pretty well. They've got a good scheme for him. They've got a good running game around him. And guess what? Oh, by the way, the defense is playing pretty good football too. So, it's a much better team. It's a different team, it seems, completely than what the Bucs faced in Carolina the second week of the season. But hey, the Bucs obviously figured out a way to stop Christian McCaffrey in that game. If they could somehow do that again, I think it gives them an edge, because here's the thing. If you stop that running back, if you stop that running game, now you're putting the game on Kyle Allen's shoulders, and I'm not sure that has happened yet. I don't think that the Panthers have actually had to really lean completely on Kyle Allen to bail him out. And if the Bucs can force that, make them a one-dimensional team that has to throw down by a score or two, they're going to be in the driver's seat. So that has to be the game plan. It has to be all about stopping Christian McCaffrey, getting some takeaways, getting a lead, getting two-score lead, and putting the pressure on Kyle Allen. If that happens, they're going to have a chance to win this game.
I think that's one of the shining moments of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially for Todd Bowles, was shutting down Christian McCaffrey in week number 2, and especially on that last play. I would venture to say, if I had a pick of the best player in the NFL, you could give me anybody, I'd take Patrick Mahomes first, but boy, Roy, I'd take Christian McCaffrey right after him.
Oh, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't argue at all. I think he's certainly one of the 5 top players. He's just one of the 5 best football players in the NFL right now. There's a few other guys certainly in that conversation, but if somebody were to come to me and say, they got Christian McCaffrey as the number 1 player in the league overall, I wouldn't argue, because he's a football player. He does so many different things, and he does them all well. He's really a weapon, and it's a feather in the Bucs' cap that they were able to stop this guy the first week. You hope that wasn't just something where he had a bad day, wasn't feeling himself, they didn't have a good game plan, couldn't seem to adjust to the fact that Cam Newton was struggling. You better hope that this was a case where the Bucs really figured something out and had an idea of how to stop Christian McCaffrey, because if it does, or if it was, then they should be able to do it again, because again, like I said, that's what they're going to need to do in order to win this game.
How much of a disadvantage is it? Obviously the first game was played in Carolina. The Bucs don't get them back in Raymond James Stadium. They have to travel to London for the rematch. How do you shape that up for the Bucs from their perspective?
It's not easy. I mean, they're on the road. This is about the point. Actually, my guess is probably about a week from now is where the Bucs get sick of being on the road, and I think the real danger comes in the games that follow this. Thankfully they have a bye week, but still, it's a bit of a pain. But you know what? I'll say this: the one thing the Bucs have done a pretty good job of, I think, is trying to look at things from a little bit different perspective under Bruce Arians. I mean, they brought in some sports scientists, to help them figure out exactly what it is that has to happen for the body to be as physically prepared and rested for a game overseas as you can have. So I think, from a preparation standpoint and how they're going to feel physically and everything else going out there to play this game, I get the feeling that this is going to be probably as well prepared as the Bucs have ever been for a game in London. They haven't done well there, and they've tried, different approaches. I mean, they've gone out early, gone out late, but here they're going to leave on Thursday. Makes sense. Treat it like a regular road trip, and just try to adjust. But I think the fact that they've got these sports scientists on their staff is going to help them a great deal. According to Bruce Arians, they've been preparing for this for the last 3 weeks. They've had guys getting themselves prepared for this trip and how they're going to adjust and how much sleep they need to get each day and each night, and how they're preparing their body. So this is something that's been in the works. I mean, they've been kind of looking gearing up towards this for a while now. So preparation-wise, they should be in as good a position as they've ever been.
That's good insight, my friend. I could use some scientists to help me in my life. I don't know about you.
Couldn't we all use some scientists in our life to help us? I think we can.
Yes. Before we get to our favorite segment at the end of the podcast, let's talk about Jameis Winston. I feel like, he's not making the errors. He's making a lot of good things out there, but man, they just got to help him, Roy. I think I'd like to see Jameis Winston with a great offensive line. We finally got the running game for him. He's always had the wide receivers. If he could get some more help, I really think we'd see a lot more good things out of him, especially with Bruce Arians in his ear.
No, I agree with you 100% there. No doubt. I would like to see Jameis with, look, it's not a matter of weapons, but sometimes the weapons, don't help him out as much as he'd like to help him out. I would have liked to have seen the Bucs run the ball a little bit more last week. I thought that would have helped him and the team a lot more, so I would have liked to have seen that. There's always a couple of guys who, seem to be struggling to catch the ball with Jameis in there, and I don't think it has anything to do with Jameis. I think that's just, players not. And look, we've talked about the weapons, but, the weapon's no good if he can't get open, and last week, Mike Evans couldn't get open, and O.J. Howard couldn't get open. And we saw, that's the exact same thing that happened. And now, granted, Jameis was having a bad day. But in the opener, you go back to it, in the opener, those guys just couldn't get open. Now, this is 2 weeks out of 5 that the receivers have just struggled to get open. And, that's what Jameis has done usually in those situations is he's done a pretty good job of hitting the underneath routes and the guys that are, just outlets. Didn't seem to do as good a job with that last week, but, sometimes those guys weren't open either. So, number one, I think, I'd like to see him with a much better offensive line. That may be asking for too much, but it's got to happen. It's kind of odd that, and look, I believe Jason Light has done a pretty good job actually of building this football team, developing in the draft and stuff like that. But, it's just, he's missed on some spots and I'm not sure that he's done a good enough job of preparing that right side of the offensive line. I mean, you can't knock him for getting Ryan Jensen. He was, arguably the best center in the league when they signed him. Donovan Smith, they spent a high draft pick on. Ali Marpet spent a high draft pick on. Those guys have worked out to a certain degree, one better than the other perhaps. But the right side of the line has been a problem, and you knew that DeMar Dotson was getting old. I mean, you could have made an argument for DeMar Dotson being out of the lineup 2 years ago. You could have said 2 years ago, it's time to start moving on. They didn't. To me, in the NFL, one of the most important things you have to do is protect your quarterback. If you've decided this is your quarterback and he's going to be your guy going forward, then you got to build around him. And you've built around him tremendously with weaponry, but you haven't protected him. And I think that's an issue, and I think it could be their undoing going forward. They've got to get – it puts a lot of pressure on the offensive coordinator, on the offensive line coach to create schemes that allow the line to overcome its weaknesses. And unfortunately, this line has a lot, and it's going to have a lot more with 2 backups in there on the right side this week against Carolina. So, we'll see where it goes, but I can't agree with you more. You're absolutely right. I would just love to see Jameis Winston. I'd just like to see, I'd like to see what he looks like, behind behind a line like they have in Dallas or behind a unit like they have in Seattle or something. I just think that he would be a much more highly acclaimed quarterback than he is, because I think it's not a matter of talent with him. Yeah, he's a gunslinger, but I just think that he's suffered as a result of a lack of talent around him in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that would be par for the course of the Bucs. He would go somewhere else and do well, but we don't want to think about that right now. You know what we want to think about, Justin? You know what time it is. More likely time, baby. 3 hypotheticals about the Bucs, sometimes about sports in general, and then sometimes we go outside the lines a little bit too. Let's go. Let's bring Justin Thomas in, our producer. I got so crazy with the all the Bucs bad news. I didn't introduce you at the beginning, my friend. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. I can handle it.
I know. You roll with the punches. All right. More likely number 1, and we're gonna get to predictions after this too. Who's been the most disappointing Buccaneer so far? All right. After 5 games, is it more likely Vernon Hargreaves? Is it more likely Donovan Smith? Or more likely O.J. Howard, Justin Thomas?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Donovan Smith off. I really honestly thought O.J. Howard would have a big year this year, but part of me shouldn't be surprised. Bruce Arians tends to not use tight ends as much, at least not in the passing game. Maybe more for blocking. I really thought Vernon Hargreaves was going to have a bigger year. He, outside of that really big tackle in the Carolina game, I haven't really can't remember him making any huge plays. And last week he seemed to get burned a lot. I really thought he would turn it on and make a step forward, but he really hasn't. So I'm going to pick Vernon Hargraves.
Yeah, Vernon Hargraves to me has kind of typified the Bucs. He gets you real excited, then he lets you down. So Roy Cummings, what do you think? Most disappointing Buccaneers so far: Hargraves, Donovan Smith, or OJ Howard? Or you could go off the board if you want.
No, you've got three good choices there, and since Justin took Vernon Hargraves, I'll take OJ Howard because I think they're 1A and 1B on that list, and might be 1A plus and 1A minus on that list because you can say both are disappointed. I can see Hargraves is disappointed because look, he came into the season healthy, new coach, new scheme that fits his skill set. A lot of talk about him, a lot of talk from him about needing to step up, be a better player. Hasn't really done it yet. And I think a lot of that is on him. Clearly, Bruce Arians believes he's got to play better and smarter. So I think but OJ Howard, I mean, this kid, we've kind of been waiting for the starlight to go on for him, and it hasn't quite happened. And I don't think it's due to anything except his own, lack of execution. He's dropped passes. He's failed to get open. He's had a real rough go of things, and I think it's all on him. So I'm going to say OJ Howard. In an offense like this, it's kind of it gives you so many opportunities down the field and to make big plays. He's yet to really make any, and he's had an opportunity to make some, and he just hasn't done it.
Yeah, I agree. OJ Howard to me is definitely my pick, and he caught that foul ball at the Rays game. He's had more catches in Tropicana Field than Raymond James Stadium that have impacted things. That's an easy joke, but OJ Howard to me, I think another hard thing, Roy, is he was kind of had that he kind of fell into the Bucs' lap in the draft. But think about all the guys they could have drafted. They could have got Dalvin Cook. They could have got a top-flight offensive lineman. There are a lot of needs on this football team. O.J. Howard was that extra accessory for this offense that already had a lot of weapons. So I think that's what makes it tougher too is, he was supposed to come in, make that immediate impact. Boy, I can't believe he fell to the Bucs. And you look at all the players they could have had, I think that makes it a little more frustrating if you're a fan.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Look, I don't disagree with the pick. To me, when a player who's ranked, some people thought he was, third best player in that draft. When that falls to you at number 11, you got to jump all over it. The Bucs were at a point then where they thought that they were, good enough that they could just take the best draft for need necessarily. And look, at the time they had a coach who was really big on two tight end schemes, and it made a whole lot of sense. I think one of the issues we have now is that maybe the tight end isn't featured as much in Bruce Arians' attack as it was in Dirk Cutter's attack. That doesn't mean you don't need two exceptional tight ends. The Bucs have that, I think, in terms of the talent between Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. But O.J. Howard's just got to play better. It's really a lot like Vernon Hargraves. He's got to play better, and until he does, the Bucs are going to have some issues.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And when you look at this football team, that's why changing coaches every other year hurts, because you draft personnel for one coach, you don't get it for another. But the best coaches adapt with their personnel. And Bruce Arians needs to get more involved, and O.J. Howard needs to find himself open a lot more in this offense. Okay, our second more likely, Justin. This may be tougher for you because you don't live in our area, but it's funny how the Tampa Bay market fluctuates. A week ago, you have the Rays on the rise, and you have the Bucs seemingly on the rise, and then you have the Lightning. They always have high expectations, but now things have kind of dipped down for the Bucs. The Rays are on fire. The Bolts always have high expectations. Who has more likely the best future? The Bucs, the Rays, or the Bolts?
I am the worst person to ask that question. I don't follow hockey, baseball, pretty much any sport outside of football and a little bit of basketball. So
we'll cheat off Roy's page.
Well, Roy has to go first.
Roy, what do you think?
I would say the Rays. Look, they're there, and you can see it won't take much for them to get better. I mean, a $56 million payroll, and they're going toe-to-toe with the best team in baseball, in my opinion, in the Astros. Beating up on pitching over the last couple of games that He's exceptional, arguably the best pitching in the major leagues. And look, they won 96 games. And with a team full of guys who not a lot of people know about. I think they figured out a system kind of like the Cardinals, who are always in the mix. Always, they've got a very good minor league system. They've got a very good idea of what it takes to win consistently at the major league level, how to keep retooling your team without falling too far off the contention bandwagon. They figured it out, and the Bucs certainly haven't figured that out. The Lightning, you're in a league there where half the teams make the playoffs anyway, and it really doesn't matter whether you're first or eighth in that group, because if you don't figure out how to play in the playoffs, you're not going to go very far, and the Lightning found that out last year. So I think the Rays have the most upside right now. I just think they're a team that could easily go out, and based on what they're doing right now, if they continue, even if they don't win anymore, even if they get knocked out, at the end of this first series here, there's going to be enough people impressed with what they're doing that they're going to get a couple of free agents to come their way. The holes that they have are not gaping. They can fill them with adequate or slightly better players and still continue to win. So I think the Rays have the better upside of all three teams.
Yeah, my favorite stat on the Rays was Zach Greinke pitching for the Astros the other night. It makes over $30 million. That's more than the starting lineup for the Rays. That's why you got to love the Rays. I mean, the front office has done all the right things, unlike the Bucs. The Lightning's done a lot of the right things, but it's just mentally, it doesn't seem like they're getting it done in the playoffs. The Rays maximize all their resources, and they're really peaking at the right time. It'll be fun to see how they do this year and moving forward. Yeah, I agree with the Rays. Upon further review, Justin, what do you think?
Roy said it perfectly.
All right, our final more likely, okay? The Bucs are heading to London. I've been to London. Roy, you've been to London. Justin, have you been to London?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say more likely, if you haven't been to London, is there a place you'd like to go to a vacation spot in Europe? You can pick London, Justin, since you've never gone. Roy and I are going to have to pick outside of London, but dream vacation spot outside of London. You could go internationally, but I was going to keep it in Europe since they're going to London.
Yeah, that's easy. I think Paris, even if I had been to London, Paris would still be top of my list. It's a city I've always wanted to go to and explore. I've heard amazing things about it. So, yeah, actually, London's pretty low. I would have picked other cities before I would actually go to London. So, I don't know what that says about London, but
I'm a big fan of London. I really enjoyed my few trips there. But, Roy, is there a place in Europe you'd like to go because you've been to London?
Yeah, I've been to London, and I've been fortunate enough to have gone to many places in Europe. I was fortunate enough. I've been to Japan. I've been to Egypt. I've been all throughout Europe. The one place I have not been the next place on my bucket list, I guess, is Greece. I haven't been to Greece, so I would like to go there. I'm a big history fan. So, I mean, going to Rome was incredible, and just about anywhere in Europe is just as exciting to someone for me, like me, who enjoys history and that kind of thing. But I'd like to go to Greece. That's the next one on my bucket list, is to get to Greece.
Yeah, Egypt. He throws Egypt down on us, Justin. That was impressive, Roy Cummings. I like that. I would love to go to Egypt.
I just happened to be in Italy, and it wasn't that very hard to get there. So
I want to go to Rome. That's where
the benefit of Marriott points, guys. The benefit of Marriott points.
We'll have to.
Okay, that's what it's all about.
Well, one day we're going to have to debate Marriott versus Hilton points, but that's a whole different podcast. And I think you may be right, even though I disagree with your music a lot, and you disagree with mine. But I want to go to Italy. I want to go to Rome. It's been something I've wanted to do for a very long time. I think just the history of Rome, the food, just everything about it. Even though I've heard Spain and Barcelona is really an attractive place to go. I'll give you my runner-up too, and you may have been here. I want to go to Italy, but I also want to go to Ireland. I've heard great things about Ireland.
Yeah, I haven't been to Ireland. My wife has some friends who live in Ireland. I haven't been there. I'd like to go. Barcelona is fabulous. It really is. The Sagrada Familia, the church that's still being built there, been built for they've been building it for 100 years, is absolutely everybody should see it, no matter what your religious leanings are. Even if you don't have them, you should go to it. It's just it's an architectural wonder. Barcelona is beautiful. Highly recommend it. And I'd like to go to Ireland too, but it's after Greece for me.
Okay, we culture you up here on your podcast for the Buccos here. We give you culture, we give you all kinds of stuff. But finally, we're going to end with predictions. And Justin, we've kind of dissected this game a little bit. We've recapped the last game. Are the Bucs going to get back on track across the pond?
You know what? I kind of think they do. I really do. Carolina's good. I don't think they're as good as their record seems to show. The running game's really, really probably the best thing they've got going. Their defense is a little suspect, and Kyle Allen he's pretty good, but it seems like the run game is what keeps him going. I think the Bucs find a way to stop Christian McCaffrey. I do think it's a close game, but they finally, I think the loss of the Saints is rough, but they figure it out, right the ship. I think they get a win.
You got a score for me?
I think it's going to be a little bit lower. I think, let's say 20-17.
20-17. Beautiful. Roy, you have a prediction score for me?
Yeah, I do. I think the Bucs bounce back as well. I think they're a slightly better football team than the Carolina Panthers. I think they've got the better quarterback, believe it or not. They may not have the better offensive line or defensive line, but I still think they've got the better weapons. I think they learned a lesson or two from their loss last week, and I think this is where Bruce Arians can do some things that some other coaches the Bucs have had just couldn't seem to do. I think Bruce Arians has the ability to get a team corrected in a short span of time and get them to take advantage of an opportunity to win a game where they just didn't play well the week before. So I think he corrects the mistakes that they had. I think they'll probably put a good game plan together for the two new offensive linemen. I think they'll correct a lot of the issues that they had, and I think they'll win this game. It's going to be a low score, but I think 24-13 Buccaneers.
Wow, I hate when we agree, but I'm going to have to agree with you guys. I think this Bucs team, there's something about it. I think they're going to show they're resilient under Arians as well. I think that's the great thing that he brings is a little swag to this team. And, maybe the motivating factor is, guys, it's been an up and down road trip, but we win here, we get a week off, we only have a couple left. Maybe psychologically, maybe the sports scientists will plant that in their heads while they're eating fish and chips over there or something. So I think they're going to score a little more. I'm going to give the Bucs a 27-24 victory over the Carolina Panthers. So if Carolina wins, we're all a bunch of idiots, but if the Bucs win, we're all a bunch of geniuses. So we'll see how it plays out. Roy Cummings, I appreciate you. I hope one day you get to go to Greece. Justin, enjoy Paris one day, and I'll always dream of Rome. But in the meantime, we'll see how the Buccos are against the Carolina Panthers. Remember, subscribe to pewterpirates.com. It's absolutely free. And let us know what you would like on future podcasts. Give us some comments. We're on all the platforms. We're on iTunes. We're on Podbean. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. We're on Google. So let us know what you're looking for in future podcasts. If you have any questions, Roy Cummings has covered this team for a long, long time and provides the kind of insight that you heard on this podcast. So until next time, thanks for logging on. I'm Mike Nabors for Justin Thomas and Roy Cummings. We'll see you next week. Talk to you next week.